Welcome to the B2B Marketing and Copywriting Podcast. I'm your host, Linda Malone, certified conversion copywriter, copy strategist, and founder of CopyWorks. Join me each week as I speak with experts in the fields of marketing, copywriting, decision-making, psychology, and more, all with one goal: to help you attract your ideal customers and inspire them to take action. This week's episode is a little different in that instead of me doing the interviewing, I'm the one on the hot seat, specifically on Sam Dunning's podcast called The Business Growth Show, which I highly recommend. In this episode, I talk about all things AI as it relates to copywriting and how copywriters can use AI to improve their work and cut down their time and increase productivity and so on. So I get into the pros and cons. I also talk about how to use AI for research, lesser known ways to use AI for copy and content, when to avoid it, and how to put it in the mix for your writing and content needs. So give it a listen.
So joining me today, I've got returning guest, Linda Malone. Linda's founder over at the CopyWorks. Linda, welcome back to the show. How are we?
Good. Thanks so much for having me on again, Sam. I appreciate it.
No dramas at all. So we're going to be chatting about AI, using it for copywriting and content. Is it hell yes? Or is there no way we should ever even consider letting AI and robots touch our masterful words? So first and foremost, is AI really a smart idea when it comes to our copywriting, our content?
I don't think we really have a choice. You know, whether you're a copywriter like myself or a content writer, it's there. It's all over. You can't avoid it. So, you know, I had put out a newsletter recently where I said I went through the 5 stages of grief with the AI, like denial, you know, oh, it's not going to happen. Anger, you know, how can they do this to us, and all of it. And now I've come to acceptance. So I feel like it's a matter of working with it, not against it.
So for people that are skeptical, I mean, to be fair, I haven't used it a ton. I mean, our team use it a bit when we're putting together certain articles for frameworks and stuff like that when writing SEO copy. Myself, I've used it for bits and pieces, still yet to get stuck in and embrace it fully. But what are, for anyone that's, I guess, yet to dabble in AI when it comes to especially producing pen to paper copy, whether that's for their website or for other means, what are the main advantages that you see?
I like it for, the number one thing I use it for is brainstorming. Right. And what I do is I almost consider it like an assistant. So I keep it open on I have 2 monitors. I keep it open on one monitor. If I run into even like defining something, I will just pop something in. It's easier than Google. The only thing is it gives me so much information. A lot of times it's overkill. It's like, I just needed like a simple sentence, but I use it for, and this is one of the things I've discovered recently. If I get on Chat GPT, because that's usually what I use, and I use the Chat GPT 4 model, so I pay $20 a month for it because it's supposed to have better information. If I use that first, I find that it could ruin my own original ideas. So I try to do something on my own and then toss it to Chat GPT and say, can you improve this? Instead of starting with it and then kind of being tainted by what it's already told me. So that's one of the things. Headlines, subject lines. Yesterday I did something I had not done yet, and it was interesting. I had, written a blog post for a client, and I said, "Can you just check this for any vocabulary, any typos?" And it said, "Well, we're going to give you some gentle changes we would recommend." And it was interesting because I didn't expect that. And it came back with, it said, "You've used the word there, THEY''RE, and they are in different places. We recommend you use consistency," which is a great point. There was no typos, but it did give me some grammar corrections, which actually were intentional on my part. So I ignored them because it follows strict grammar rules, but not conversational rules.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. So from that side of things, are we talking about quite literally feeding it in our own ideas? Like you mentioned there, things like headlines, perhaps subject lines for emails, that kind of thing, and then using it to perhaps polish those, whether it is check for typos, whether it is make small tweaks, incremental changes. Is that what we're talking about as one of the main use cases?
Yeah, for me, it's even with my own podcast. I've put in titles I've come up with, or I've asked for titles. And the more specific you are, the better. So if you say, I want to use, these words, and I usually will say, help me create an engaging, captivating, title that will attract marketers. Like the more specific you are for who it's for, exactly what words you want to use. But it does tend to overuse certain words. Like if you ask for a title or subject line, it loves the word unleash. I don't know why.
I've seen that a lot in ChatGPT. Yeah.
And a lot of exclamation points, which is, to me, it's lazy writing as far as copy goes. If you have to use a lot of exclamation points, you need to look at your copy. It's usually, so it loves it. It loves colons. It'll have, and so I will say, please eliminate the colons. Don't use this word. And then it comes back with something. I end up combining a bunch of them is usually how I end up with the finished title. But yeah, I don't know why it loves that word so much, but yeah.
Okay. What would you say are some of the drawbacks, some of the negatives that you've seen from using it so far?
Really just the overuse of certain words, and that it pulls from the internet, obviously. So you're going to get a lot of what I call marketing speak. I did a whole post on LinkedIn about it that went viral a couple weeks ago, because it will use the same words over and over. It sounds robotic. There is actually a software, I can't think of the name of it offhand, but I'm sure you could Google it, that can check. I will cut and paste something that I think is written by AI, even if it's a comment in LinkedIn, and I'll pop it in there, and it'll tell you the percentage chances that it is written by AI. And the reason is it uses these same words over and over. That's the biggest issue, is it doesn't produce copy that is conversational. It's grammatically correct, but it's just the same old stuff. So that's the biggest problem I find.
Yeah. I've seen like a rise in LinkedIn comments as well, like on my posts and other people's posts in the feed, where you can straight away, I don't know what it is, but you can just see it's AI. I think they pretty much copy and paste the person's LinkedIn post into ChatGPT or a similar tool,
right?
And then basically say, give me a reply for this post.
Yeah.
And then the reply that they put is usually like a really long paragraph, but it's just basically mixing and matching what you said with more jargon, confusing words, and then saying at the end, great post, Sam, or great post, Linda. And it's like,
exactly. Yeah. Great post. Good job. Yeah. It's like, it's not somebody, a person.
Yeah. It is funny. It does make me laugh when I see those in the feed. Cool. So those are some kind of negatives in terms of what it's doing. So what might be quite fun to do to give the audience something tangible is if we could perhaps do a step-by-step, maybe through initial research through to a final piece of copywriting. What would be the process? And feel free to do that maybe on a headline, or I don't know, a cold email, or maybe a website homepage. You pick the outcome or the medium. But we start with the kind of initial foundations right through to end copy and incorporating AI as you recommend.
Well, I usually start, I don't start with a headline. Like say, for example, if I'm writing, I have not used this for emails because I just don't think it's good. But if it is say a blog post,
sure,
I would pull all the research and notes that I have, interviews even. And this is where I found it's really helpful. I'll take, like, say, this is being recorded. I can take the transcript, pop it into AI and say, pull out the most relevant points. What are some bullet points?
Yep.
That is very helpful. With a client recently she wanted me to write a landing page for her, and she had 4 personas. And I said, how am I going to write this? So, and it was for a homepage, so I had to include all of them. I took all the personas, threw it into chat and said, what are the similarities between these 4? And it came up with some really great points. Something that I said, what is overlapping with all these audiences? So I would start with getting all my research kind of organized that way, pulling out, but you also have to go back in and check because it has missed some points that I've seen this a few times. I've had to go back in and say, okay, didn't capture this, didn't capture. So you have to double check it, but you can get a basic outline for how, and you can ask it, okay, how should I structure this post? What makes sense? And again, the more specific, the better. So it will come up with, okay, start with an overall view here, and it'll break it out. It's great for that.
Got it. And
so, yeah,
I know when we had you on the show before, you gave us kind of a walkthrough on doing certain pieces of research before you actually dive in and do any copywriting at all. Now, in terms of the actual research that you want to feed into ChatGPT or a similar tool, I know you said you can pull call recordings. In this landing case instance, you had 4 personas that you put in there, and it kind of put them all the similarities together. Are there certain pieces of research that you are kind of always something that you recommend that people do in a B2B space before they actually go ahead and dive into any copy, whether they're writing out themselves using AI assistants or whatever?
I'm not sure if I'm answering this right, but the interviews that I do with customers, that I find is really helpful. Especially if you use something, I use Fireflies to record and use a transcript. I'll take the whole thing. It saves a ton of time. That's really the first thing I do. So if I'm writing, say, for example, like I said, a blog post, I don't do a lot of blog, let's just say a landing page, and I want to pull out the challenges. That's one of the things you can do. From all these interviews, what are the biggest challenges that this audience has? That I've done, and it's been very helpful. The other thing is you can ask it, what are the biggest objections? And that you can get even more general, and just, you don't have to use your research for that you can use it as part of it. But I did this yesterday. I said, if I am selling, it's just something I was thinking about. If I'm selling a copywriting course to marketers, what will be the biggest objections to this audience? And it came up with, pricing, or the fact that everyone has this. And so those are the things that I know I'm going to have to tackle in my copy.
Okay.
So if does that make sense? So it's like, you want to know.
Yeah.
Because if you're using copywriting, you're using, say, for the most simple one, pain, agitation, and solution, you want to find what are the pain points? What are some specifics? The specifics, I think, are ones you really have to do on your own, because you need to talk to people. And that's something chat can't do. AI can't do.
Yeah. Okay. So in that case, you're pulling the cool transcripts, upload them into a tool like ChatGPT, and then you're giving it quite specific prompts, like pull out the challenges that are raised often in these call recordings, or pull out the objections from these call transcripts. Okay, so it's literally giving you a list, so you don't have to listen to it back, and then you can kind of get the bullet points, I guess, and then collate those all together. Right.
And then you can dive further. Sometimes what you can also do is take something that it said and say, can you expand on this? Like ask it for more details. It's a conversation. It's sort of weird sometimes, because like yesterday when I popped in the thing for my vocabulary, like, can you get any spelling? And it said, well, we're going to help you with, because it has no emotion. So it was just funny. We're going to help you fine tune this. There's some things that can improve this copy. And I'm like, wait a minute. I didn't ask you to do that. And it's almost like if it's a person, you would take offense, but it's a computer. So, it's AI. So.
And when you're doing that, like when you've asked it for specific things like putting out challenges, putting out common objections, putting out pain points, has there ever been a time where what it's pulled out has been complete nonsense, or are they generally pretty on point with what you remember from the calls that you've had?
No, it's on point. It's just sometimes too general.
Okay.
Like it'll give me a general idea, but that's when I have to go back into the original conversation and find what exactly did they say, because the specifics are really what make copy, it goes from good to great. You have to really know what, because it says, oh, they're busy people. Well, how are they busy? Do they have families? Are they, are they corporate executives? What is it that makes them busy? So details, it's not good at.
Nice. Going into the detail of each point. Got it. Let's carry on with the landing page theme. Are there anything else that we should be doing from a research perspective? So as well as using the cool transcripts and perhaps personas, if there's anything else you want to add into that, is there anything else we can use from a research perspective with AI front, or is that all the things we should consider?
One of the things that I've found really helpful is to compare your competitors. You can ask it, but you have to keep in mind that AI is 2 years behind. So they're not going to have the most recent, but you can take, say it's SaaS companies. You can ask, what are the top 3 or 5 most well-known SaaS companies, and be more specific than that. And then you can break that down further. What are their differences. And you can ask Chat GPT to put it in a table, which I never knew you could do that. Please organize this and compare them. And it will list what their attributes and features are. And almost like when you go to a sales page and it has the check marks, if you buy the basic program, if you buy the moderate, the high price, it will tell you, I've only done this a couple times, but just what all the competition is doing and where they are the same and where they are different. So creating a table is something I don't think most people know, about. And that's helpful for comparison, especially with your competition or your client's competition, with something like keywords even. You might know about that. So.
Yeah, for sure. And is that, in terms of actually comparing competitors, is that more so you can do research and analysis of what they're doing and things that you might be able to improve in our case improve on our landing page, or is that for quite literally putting into the page itself, or what are some nice ways you can leverage that data from your experience?
You talk about how your product is different. This is, excuse me, we have like dust in the air over here. It's been really bad. Talk about how this is what is out there and this is how we're different, or even using it as an objection, like say everyone does a certain thing, and why you don't do it. And just, it gives you leverage in the way that you're bringing that out. Because if they're shopping around, they're not ready to buy and they're comparing products, that's what they're going to be doing. So you want to bring out, okay, I know what, the other guys are doing, and this is why we are not, or this is why we're doing it better. But it enables you to kind of approach the objection and address it before they shop around and say, well, they don't do this.
Definitely makes sense. Well, especially in the B2B space. I mean, especially with higher ticket offers, whether that's a service, whether that's a piece of tech, a piece of SaaS software. I mean, most companies are going to compare 3 or so vendors as a minimum. So it kind of makes sense if you can bring those points up early. If you can know what the competition's doing, then address your points of differentiation. It's always going to be an advantage to leverage for sure. Are there anything else that we should be doing on the research side of things before we actually go ahead and kind of put the copy together in our landing page example, or those are the main ones?
Just a cautionary thing is it's when it comes to, because a big part of what I do in my research is to go into social, and social media is not its strong point. It'll pop up with a caveat. Hey, we're 2 years behind. I mean, 2 years is an eternity in social media. So that I think you still need to do manually just to pull out what people, because I get a lot of information, great info on like Reddit. I'll go on Quora. What are people saying about this particular thing? Chat, I don't think, last I checked, it didn't do that. So that's the other thing. And then pulling out quotes from your customers or clients, because sometimes those end up on headlines because they're so good.
Yep.
That's something you still want to go in and do, just to make sure you get it right.
Nice. In terms of taking this like refined information that AI has given us, so from our call recordings, we've pulled out a bunch of things. Let's say like we've defined kind of the common things across the different client personas we've got. We've pulled out a bunch of specific and crispy challenges, objections, and pain points from our call recordings. Perhaps we've compared some of our competitors, got a bit of an analysis. We've got all this data, but I'd imagine that's quite a lot of info. And that might just look like a wall of text on a landing page. So what's your process, Linda, for taking that information, then actually, I mean, feel free to start from the top if you wish, in terms of kind of putting that into a headline and then the body copy. But how do we process that into something that's actually going to resonate with our target prospects and ultimately convert, I guess?
I mean, you definitely want to approach the challenges of what they are going through. And the thing is, SaaS, a lot of times it doesn't follow the pain agitation solution format. There's like 20 something different copywriting formulas you can use. If you're using pain agitation solution, what I would suggest is what I do is I start with the pain points in the middle of the page. I don't even touch the headline, because that's you want to spend the most time on the headline, because you've heard this a million times, 80% of people will not even read past the headline. So you want to make sure that is really powerful. So you get the main challenges down, and make sure you address them. So it's like, here's what you're dealing with. That would be the pain points. Then the agitation is really getting into how it's affecting their daily life, or their daily business. For example, I have a client who he has a SaaS company where he takes paper forms and he converts them to a mobile app. That's what they do. So the pain point is you have reams of paper. Their numbers are getting transposed. You have to stay up till midnight. And this was from an actual interview with one of his customers to, upload all this information instead of just taking out your phone and popping it into a mobile app. So I would get into what it really looks like, staying up into, till midnight, transposing numbers, messing up everything in accounting. And then, okay, but now here's how this can help you. So then you get in with the solution. And then I'd go back. So then you talk about why you can and how you can solve that problem. And then I would look at all that and pull out what is the most powerful point that you can make that might make the hero. And I said that might because a lot of times we use the value prop for the hero. So it depends on the client, depends on the product. It's really case by case. And sometimes the client will prefer a particular thing, and it's not right or wrong. You can always change it. And then the solution, and then you have, so that's the three main parts. And then the call to action, of course, is something we talked about in the last interview, which is don't put learn more, because learn sounds like work. You want to say, complete the sentence, I want to schedule a demo, talk to someone. Anything other than learn more is how I have been taught by my copywriting coaches. Even though people use it a lot, it's kind of a fallback that, you can do better. So what do you really want people to do? What are they going to find on the other side of that button?
Yeah, makes sense. In terms of what you started with, starting midway, kind of using those pain points that were raised, the problems, and then agitating them. Do you find, or do you recommend that listeners kind of quite literally take the points if they've deciphered them from a transcript and then ChatGPT has formulated them into some kind of list, that they just kind of put those into the page? Or do they need quite a lot of then human work to decide which ones are worthy of making the final landing page? And then do you find that they need quite a lot of tweaking to actually make sure they make context and are going to kind of hit home with your prospects that are landing on this page?
Yeah. I mean, you definitely have to edit them. And sometimes they repeat things. There's nothing, you can't completely just sidestep and cut and paste. I just wouldn't recommend that, because it takes, as I said earlier, it's really, writing conversationally. You don't want to sound like a bot. So how would your customer say this? How would you tell somebody about this? If you wouldn't use those words, then it shouldn't be in your copy. That's the other thing is ChatGPT tends to use a lot of not big words in the way that people don't understand it, but it doesn't write at a 5th grade reading level, which is what's recommended for 93% of your readers can read at that level. And when I've asked it to do it, it usually comes up with something almost Dr. Seuss-like. It's like, no. It doesn't even understand that. You need to go in and it's not just a matter of the words you're using. You have to shorten sentences. That's the other thing, is you want to shorten sentences, have a combination of short and long sentences. All the same length sentences is equivalent to speaking in a monotone voice. It's just drones on and on. So you want to vary that. But yeah, you never just cut and paste from chat. I wouldn't.
Got it. Yeah, makes perfect sense. Okay. And in terms of kind of the titles, you're mentioning a bit about not necessarily going the hero area and the title area, not necessarily going with kind of feature led. Could you dive a bit more detail into kind of any AI prompts you use there, or is that more once you've worked on that body copy with the pain, agitation, and solution formula, then you decide kind of what makes sense as the headline, or any tips around that?
I actually have, and I could send you the link you can include if you want in the show notes. There's a headline analyzer, and I don't know it offhand, but it's one I've been using lately, and it will tell you, it'll break it apart to tell you what, how good it is. And I usually will use that. So I'll start with coming up with my own ideas I'll put it into chat. I want to include these words. This is the audience. It tends to make long ones. So I'll say limit it to 5 words. And if that's usually more for emails. And then I will go into the headline analyzer with maybe the 3 top ones.
Yep.
And see which one resonates the most. And it's a process. I mean, it's not something that you just want to throw out there because people aren't going to read anything if they don't get past your headline. So
yeah, no doubt. And we've talked quite a lot about kind of long form copy in terms of, in our case, our example, we've walked through a landing page. Any nice use cases that you found, or any lesser known use cases, Linda, in terms of short form copy or anything like that, really attention grabbing stuff or really simplified copy that you kind of used AI for?
I've tried it for LinkedIn posts. I will take one, especially, when you've been as consistent. I mean, I've been on LinkedIn for going on 3 years now, so I have hundreds of posts. And I will take a post that's been popular and I want to repurpose it. So I pop it in. Can you reword this, but keep the same, gist? I'm usually not happy with it. I have yet to find it really do a great job, but sometimes it'll just get me thinking like, okay, I can, because it'll start adding the marketing speak. It'll start adding exclamation points where I don't want it. I'm sure it'll have the word unleash in there somewhere. I just don't. It's like, all right, this doesn't sound like me anymore. But sometimes it'll just give me ideas. I may not use the ideas it presents, but it'll help. But that I found it can be helpful. Emails, again, I'm not big on it because you have such a short time to capture somebody's attention, especially now there's been a lot of talk on LinkedIn about don't send me your AI email because I'm going to call you out on it. So people are doing it. But LinkedIn posts is really the only other way I'm using it.
Yeah. I mean, from what I've seen, it's great to kind of feed your past content and then serve you ideas, bring up inspiration, like you said, use for research to collate ideas and then get shortened points or get summaries or give it prompts to get ideas from other use case perspectives or persona perspectives and stuff like that. But certainly I haven't got this feature yet, but I know LinkedIn are rolling out an AI feature because one of the other owners at WebChoice showed me, and he was showing me some posts for it about, like, in his case, he was trying to do an SEO post and it basically just did a paragraph like, SEO is search engine optimization. It's getting your website top of organic search. It's the top spots in Google, the non-paid listings. So I was like, yeah, it sounds like a robot took this. So I think it's a good thing about LinkedIn is everyone kind of writes about their expertise, but they put their point of view on it. And I think that's what it's missing, the point of view element of what someone's opinion is with their own hot take, with their own thoughts and 2 cents. And
emotions. It doesn't have emotions.
Exactly.
And that's what gets people to decide. I mean, it's probably the number one thing is how are you going to write something? If people don't feel anything, they don't take any action. And chat can't do that. And it even says, I asked before this interview, I was popping in like, what are some of the negatives? And I kind of, as I say, I make Chat GPT punch itself in the face. It's like, where are you lacking information? And so it says that creativity and originality, emotional intelligence, doesn't have intuition. It doesn't have tone and voice consistency. These are all things people have to add, and that's something it can't do, which hopefully it never can, but I don't know.
I was going to say, do you think for example, they've recently rolled out that conversation. I can't remember the tool, but it was an AI conversation posing as a sales rep from Tesla. Have you seen that one where he basically runs a customer service call to, I'm imagining, a website inquiry, and he basically runs it as if he was the sales rep booking the meeting with a prospect that was interested in a Tesla test drive. And it sounds good, but it's not quite to human level. So for example, when the prospect responds, there's like a 3-second delay, so almost unnatural delay. And then he kind of repeats some of the stuff, but it's nearly there to say in five years time, these AI machines could definitely, I reckon, make cold calls and almost be fluent as a human. So it'd be interesting to see how this is going to impact copy. Or do you think it never will, in terms of kind of some of these things that we've talked about with the human emotional element?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's going to take 5 years. I mean, last year at this time, I never heard of Chat GPT. Now look at it. It's all over. And then I heard something. I saw a news story about how people, they can use AI to bring back people who've passed on. Like they will take recordings of people who died. And I mean, to me, that was, okay, now we're getting into the creepy.
Bit scary, isn't it?
Yeah. So who knows? I just hope there's always a need for real people, because otherwise I'm out of a job. So I believe that there's always going to be some human element involved. And yeah, I got on a chat bot the other day with a healthcare provider. It was obviously a chat bot, and they said, now we're going to get a human to come in and answer your questions. And it was another chat bot. I could tell. I'm like, okay, I can't talk to a person apparently. So.
Oh dear. There we go. Yeah, just to summarize, Linda, so we've walked through a nice summary of kind of how you can use AI for research, implementing it on examples like a landing page. To flip it to the other side, what are, as of now, as of the time of recording, kind of July 2023, what are the main things that you should definitely avoid when it comes to AI? What are the main things? You touched on emotion, for an example, or getting emotive with your copy. What are the main things where we really need to make sure that we keep that human element and human review and human implementation?
How do we do that? Or
what are the main things that we shouldn't run through AI when specifically with copywriting? Are there any that we haven't touched on where you really need to kind of steer clear of AI or robots and make sure that you put your own input when it comes to getting impact from your copywriting?
I think emails are probably the biggest one. Like, you can have it check your vocabulary and stuff, but I just think you have such a short amount of time to grab somebody's attention. If you give it away that you're using AI, it's going to really be a turnoff before they even read what you have to say. I wouldn't use it for emails. I mean, you always are going to need a person to interview your customers. You can't do that through AI. That's how you're going to get your best information. I would just say you always have to check and double check anything you use it for, because for one, the information may not be accurate. And the other is to keep it conversational. You're always going to have to tweak it. It's just going to give you the facts. And now you need to break it up and make it sound like a person. And adding emotion to it would be, the challenges and the pain points. Those are things you need to speak to people about. And hopefully it won't be handing that over to AI.
Yeah. Let's hope not. Awesome. Linda, really appreciate the conversation as always. With that, please do tell us more about how everyone can connect with you, learn more.
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, of course. My website is thecopyworks.com, and I have a weekly newsletter too, where I send out all different kinds of copy conversion tips for marketers and copywriters. That's the best place to find me.
Awesome. And we'll put all of those links in the show notes at businessgrowth.marketing. Thanks once again, Linda. Enjoyed the chat.
Thank you.
And that is a wrap of today's episode. I hope you found some actionable advice that you can use to help you improve your copy conversions. And for even more copywriting exclusive tips, be sure to click the link in the show notes to sign up for my weekly newsletter so you don't miss a beat. And as always, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to leave a review. It really helps me out. Talk again soon.